Nestled in a picturesque suburb, the neighborhood exudes charm with its tree-lined streets and inviting homes, each adorned with unique features that reflect the personalities of their owners. At first glance, it seems like the perfect place to settle down, where families thrive and neighbors wave hello as they pass by. However, lurking beneath this idyllic exterior is a homeowners association, or HOA, that prides itself on enforcing a strict set of rules designed to maintain property values and community aesthetics. Initially, interactions with the HOA were benign. Welcome packets were filled with guidelines about lawn maintenance and shared amenities. Residents appreciated the efforts to keep the neighborhood looking pristine, but there was an underlying tension. As the months passed, whispers began to circulate about an overzealous board member, affectionately dubbed HOA Karen, who took her role far too seriously. Her presence soon became synonymous with unsolicited inspections and arbitrary fines. Little did I know that my own experience with her would soon escalate into an unbelievable confrontation over the very ownership of my home, setting off a chain of events that would challenge everything I thought I knew about community living. Enter HOA Karen, the self-proclaimed gatekeeper of our neighborhood standards. With her perfectly coiffed hair and a penchant for pastel cardigans, she embodies the archetype of a well-meaning but overly controlling neighbor. As a long-standing member of the Homeowners Association Board, she wields her authority like a badge of honor, often scrutinizing every detail of community life. Whether the flower bed that doesn't meet her aesthetic preferences or a car parked slightly askew, Karen's watchful eye misses nothing. Her strict enforcement of community rules has earned her both respect and resentment among residents. While some admire her commitment to maintaining property values, others dread the thought of crossing her path. Stories abound of her sending out violation notices for minor infractions, often accompanied by passive-aggressive letters that drip with condescension. Despite her reputation, I never imagined I would be on the receiving end of her wrath. But as I soon discovered, Karen's obsession with control knows no bounds. What began as minor disputes over lawn decorations would swiftly escalate into a shocking demand that would leave me questioning not just my rights as a homeowner, but the very fabric of our community. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when the unexpected happened. I was tending to my garden, lost in thought, when HOA Karen appeared at my doorstep, her expression a mix of determination and self-importance. Clutching a clipboard and wearing her signature frown, she wasted no time launching into her latest grievance. To maintain community standards, she began, I need to inform you that your property is now subject to rental fees. My heart sank as I struggled to process what she was saying. Rent? For my own house? I blinked in disbelief as she continued, citing obscure community regulations that I had never encountered before. According to Section 4, 2B of the bylaws, she declared, any home that does not comply with our aesthetic guidelines can be classified as a rental property. The absurdity of her claim hung in the air as I tried to comprehend the implications. I knew my garden wasn't perfect, but charging rent for my own home felt like an invasion of my rights. As she rattled off more regulations, I could feel a mix of anger and confusion bubbling inside me. This confrontation was only the beginning of a battle I never anticipated. As Karen's words sank in, I felt a wave of disbelief wash over me. I stood there, frozen at my doorstep, grappling with the surreal nature of her demand. This can't be happening, I thought, my mind racing to comprehend the absurdity of the situation. The sun shone brightly overhead, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I wanted to laugh, thinking it was some kind of bizarre joke, perhaps an elaborate prank orchestrated by my neighbors. But Karen's steely gaze told me she was serious. My heart raced as confusion morphed into frustration. How could she even think this was acceptable? I glanced around my yard, searching for signs of validation in the blooming flowers and well-kept lawn that had always made me proud. Wasn't maintaining my property a testament to my commitment to the community? As she continued to rattle off obscure regulations, each word felt like a jab at my sanity. I fought the urge to shout out that I was not a tenant in my own home. Instead, I stood there, caught between laughter and tears, struggling to find the words to challenge this unbelievable claim. How had it come to this? Determined to fight back, I dove headfirst into researching the HOA guidelines. Late into the night, I found myself glued to my computer screen. poring over the community bylaws and regulations that had been handed out at the time of purchase. My eyes strained from reading countless pages, searching for any mention of rental fees or aesthetic requirements that could back up Karen's claim. However, the more I read, the more I found inconsistencies that raised red flags. Frustrated but resolute, I decided to reach out to my neighbors for their insights. One evening, I hosted an informal gathering in my backyard, inviting anyone who seemed willing to share their experiences with the HOA. As we swapped stories over snacks and drinks, it quickly became evident that Karen wasn't just targeting me. Several neighbors had faced her unfair demands. One neighbor recounted how she received a citation for a holiday decoration that was deemed too gaudy. Another shared a story about being fined for trimming their hedge improperly. It was clear we were all grappling with the same oppressive atmosphere created by the HOA's arbitrary rules. Armed with this newfound knowledge and camaraderie, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. Fueled by a newfound sense of purpose, I began reaching out to my neighbors more intentionally. I organized a gathering at the local park, knowing that many residents had shared their frustrations with me in passing conversations. As the sun set and the warm evening air filled with laughter, I took the opportunity to address the group about my encounter with HOA Karen and her outrageous claim. To my surprise, as I shared my story, others began to open up, revealing their own experiences with her overreach. One neighbor recounted how Karen had attempted to impose fines on them for a fence that was too tall, while another spoke of being reprimanded for simply letting their grass grow a little long during a particularly rainy season. Each story echoed my own feelings of disbelief and frustration, and it became clear that we were all victims of the same oppressive atmosphere. This gathering not only fostered camaraderie, but also ignited a collective resolve among us. We decided to form an informal support group, vowing to stand together against the HOA's unreasonable demands. It was empowering to know that I wasn't alone in this battle. Together, we could challenge the authority that had loomed over us for too long. The day of the HOA meeting arrived, and the atmosphere crackled with tension as I walked into the community center, flanked by my supportive neighbors. Armed with folders filled with evidence and notes from our previous discussions, I felt a surge of determination. As we took our seats, I could see Karen at the front, her expression a mix of confidence and annoyance as she prepared to assert her authority once again. When it was finally my turn to speak, I stood up, heart-pounding but resolute. I'd like to address the recent claim made against me regarding rental fees of my home. I began, my voice steady. The board members shifted in their seats, and I could feel Karen's glare piercing through me. I presented the inconsistencies in the bylaws I had discovered, pointing out that there was no mention of rental fees tied to aesthetic violations. As I spoke, my neighbors chimed in with their own experiences, echoing my sentiments and reinforcing our stand against Karen's unreasonable demands. The room was charged with a sense of unity that seemed to unsettle the board. It was clear we were no longer just individuals. We were a community ready to challenge the status quo and reclaim our rights as homeowners. In the wake of our confrontation at the HOA meeting, it didn't take long for Karen to retaliate. The following week, I found a letter from the HOA in my mailbox, and my heart sank as I ripped it open. It was a formal notice of violation citing excessive noise during our gathering and claiming that I had disrupted the peace of the neighborhood. The letter threatened fines if I didn't adhere to their so-called community guidelines. Karen's tactics became increasingly aggressive. She made it clear that she would stop at nothing to reassert her control over us. In conversations with neighbors, I learned that she had begun scouring yards for any potential infractions, even issuing warnings about minor overgrown weeds or misplaced decorations. The atmosphere shifted. What had once been a vibrant sense of community now felt tense and uncertain. Many residents expressed fear of retaliation if they continued to support me openly. It was disheartening to see how deeply Karen's need for control affected everyone. But rather than cower in fear, we fueled each other's resolve. If anything, her threats only solidified our determination to stand together and push back against a reign of intimidation. Feeling the weight of Karen's retaliatory tactics, I knew it was time to take a more serious approach. After discussing the situation with my supportive neighbors, I made a decision to consult a lawyer who specialized in property rights and HOA regulations. The following week, I scheduled an appointment, anxious yet hopeful for clarity. As I sat in the lawyer's office, I recounted the events that had unfolded, the outrageous demand for rent, the subsequent threats, and the oppressive atmosphere that Karen had created. The lawyer listened intently, nodding as I shared my frustrations. He explained the legal implications of HOA overreach and emphasized the importance of understanding our rights as homeowners. HOAs have certain powers, he said, but they cannot violate your property rights or impose arbitrary fees without proper justification. His words were reassuring and empowering. He walked me through relevant bylaws and case laws that could support my position. Armed with this knowledge, I realized that I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was standing up for every homeowner in our community who had felt silenced by Karen's authority. With renewed determination, I left the office ready to take on whatever came next. The day of the follow-up meeting with the HOA arrived, and I could feel the tension in the air as I walked into the room, armed with my lawyer's guidance and a newfound sense of empowerment. This time, I wasn't just presenting my case. I was ready to dismantle Karen's authority with solid evidence. As I stood before the board, I confidently laid out my findings. According to our community bylaws, I began, there is no provision allowing the HOA to charge homeowners rent based on aesthetic violations. Holding up a copy of the bylaws, I highlighted the sections that explicitly supported my claim. The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, clearly caught off guard. Karen attempted to interject, her voice rising in frustration. But this time, I was prepared. With my lawyer's advice echoing in my mind, I calmly pointed out that her arbitrary interpretations of the rules were not just unreasonable. They were legally indefensible. As more neighbors rallied behind me, sharing their own stories of unfair treatment, it became increasingly clear that Karen's reign of intimidation was crumbling. In that moment, the tide began to turn. My confidence surged as I realized we were no longer isolated individuals, but a united front against an unjust authority. The aftermath of our successful confrontation with the HOA marked a significant turning point for our community. The once muted voices of neighbors transformed into a powerful chorus demanding change. Inspired by our shared struggle against Karen's overreach, residents began to rally together, fueled by a collective desire for transparency and fairness in our governance. We organized regular meetings to discuss our experiences with the HOA, establishing a platform for residents to voice their concerns and propose new guidelines. With each gathering, the energy in the room was palpable, as people who had previously felt powerless now engaged in meaningful dialogue about community issues. Our discussions led to the formation of a committee dedicated to revising the HOA bylaws, ensuring they would reflect the interests of all homeowners rather than the whims of a few board members. As we worked together, a newfound sense of solidarity emerged. Neighbors who had once been strangers became allies, united by a common goal. The fear that had once permeated our community began to dissipate, replaced by empowerment and hope. We were no longer just residents. We were advocates for change, committed to fostering a neighborhood where every voice mattered and where fairness reigned supreme. In the weeks that followed our successful confrontation, a palpable shift occurred within the community. Karen, realizing her grip on the HOA was slipping, retreated from her aggressive tactics. The board, under increasing pressure from the united residents, began to reassess its policies and practices. At our next meeting, they announced plans to revise the bylaws, promising increased transparency and a more democratic approach to governance. For me, this journey had been transformative. I emerged not just as a homeowner defending my rights, but as an advocate for my neighbors. The experience taught me the importance of standing up for what is right and the power of community solidarity. I had discovered my voice in a situation that felt hopeless and learned that change is possible when individuals come together. As I reflected on the conflict, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride in what we had accomplished. Our neighborhood was no longer defined by fear, but by collaboration and mutual respect. With renewed confidence, I look forward to participating actively in our community's future, knowing that together we could create a living environment that truly reflected our collective values and aspirations. This battle had not only changed the HOA, but had also reshaped our sense of community for the better. The impact of our struggle against HOA Karen rippled through the neighborhood, leaving a lasting legacy that extended far beyond the immediate conflict. In the months that followed, residents became more vigilant and informed about their rights as homeowners. Workshops on HOA regulations and property rights were organized, empowering others to understand the rules that govern our community and to challenge unfair practices when necessary. The newfound awareness fostered a culture of transparency and open communication. Neighbors who once kept to themselves began engaging more actively in community discussions, sharing ideas and concerns about neighborhood issues. This spirit of unity transformed our gatherings into lively forums filled with collaboration and collective problem-solving. The changes to the HOA bylaws not only redefined governance, but also reinforced a sense of belonging among residents. We learned that our voices mattered, and together we could affect change. The experience instilled confidence in many, inspiring individuals to participate in local governance and advocate for improvements in our shared living space. Ultimately, this incident served as a powerful reminder of the strength found in solidarity. Our community emerged stronger, more connected, and committed to ensuring that every homeowner felt respected and valued, a true testament to the power of standing up for what is right.